crossing that 1 million in revenue threshold is a big win. So hello, my name is Mark Flynn. I am the Managing Director of an award-winning business called Rubik. We are an IT services and solutions provider, best known for helping manufacturers to bridge the digital gap.
Awesome. So then I suppose the sort of next shift is painting the picture of life and business before startup or KPI, whichever one you sort of want to delve into.
So my background pre-KPI, pre-meeting Dent, was that I was a corporate executive. I'd been in technology consulting for 20 years. And I reached an executive level position, which I always thought was my goal. And I can remember sitting around the board table one afternoon thinking, is this really it? Is this what I've kind of spent the last 20 years trying to achieve? I had financial success, career success, all of the things that I thought that I wanted, but I felt very much unfulfilled. So I heard the call to a venture and decided that I would take a risk with myself and go out on my own. And when I left corporate, suddenly, for whatever reason, I felt like I'd lost all my skills. So I felt it challenging to go out and sell. I felt that I lacked the confidence that I had in my corporate role. And I certainly lacked the resources and brand that I had in my corporate role. And I quickly realized that when I was in that corporate role, a lot of what I felt was success was coming from being part of that company. You know, I could pick up the phone and call any customer or prospect and say, hello, this is Mark from Kinos. And they would take my call. But whenever it was, hello, this is Mark Flynn, they were like, who, what are you selling? So I needed to immerse myself in the startup world and be part of a community that were having similar struggles, and maybe get some advice and guidance on how to transition from that corporate role into the startup role. And I came across the book Oversubscribed, Dan's book Oversubscribed. I don't know how. I think fate or the Instagram algorithm had put it in front of me. And I read that and I thought that is exactly what I need, because when I transitioned out initially, I wanted to do coaching. I wanted to do performance coaching with the kind of younger demographic, 18 to 30, really. So I felt that, moving from the security of a corporate job into the startup world, I needed to have a community behind me to, kind of help me to really sell and market myself, I think was the biggest challenge. The amazing thing I learned as part of the journey is traction solves all ills. When you start to get leads in, you start to do the appointments, you start to do the presentations, you start to do the sales, your confidence kind of builds. And that was the first thing that I learned as part of the Chaos engagement. So I'd been on Chaos first and then KPI later. So working through Chaos, getting the concept of laps in there was a big thing for me. And that helped me to gain traction and kind of move on in the business. I suppose the second thing that came out of the first Chaos engagement was, whether coaching was the right thing for me to do in order to fulfill or to scratch the itch that I was trying to scratch, to put it better. And a conversation with Dan kind of highlighted that for me. I had a passion for helping young people, but they didn't necessarily have the funds available to spend that I wanted to charge. And he put me on the path that I'm now on in terms of going back to my mountain of value, and kind of reigniting that passion for technology consulting, so that I could create a body of income and a body of wealth that would allow me to then go and fulfill my passion of helping others who might not be able to afford the prices I wanted to charge.
Awesome. So impact is really interwoven in everything that you do, wanting to make a bigger impact, and you're running your business, and then you're able to put back into the community with younger folks. Is that sort of what you've got going on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, provide coaching service now pro bono because my income's coming from my consulting business that, kind of leverages that 20-year experience that I have within that space and creates I suppose, financial security to allow me to go and explore other passions. And I think that's probably where I will end up long term. It's probably a good number of years off yet, but the idea is with the consulting business to effectively remove myself from the day to day as I build out the team, and then that will allow me the freedom essentially to go and spend my time on things that I truly enjoy.
Awesome, awesome. And tell me a little bit about your transition into KPI from startup.
Yeah, so I'd always wanted to do KPI. I knew people that were on the program. Now, I didn't believe the salesperson. I've forgotten his name at the time when I tried to get into KPI, and he said, no, you should go for chaos. But um, he was quite right. I needed to do the foundational work before I go on to the next level. So I think after 2 years of running the consulting business, we decided to apply for KPI. And at the time, one of the big things for me was being able to bring my team on it. So there's myself and two other founders in the consulting business. And I wanted to get a common methodology, a common terminology within the business for how we were going to go. So the five Ps essentially. Um, so once we got some traction within the business, I really wanted to start to polish it and begin to build out the assets that would allow it to grow. And I suppose one of the big transitions between Chaos and KPI was, this concept of, sharpening the market, not in your mind. So in Chaos, I spent a lot of time trying to get the ideal idea and the ideal offer for clients. But actually, the reality is you just got to go one way that you feel is right and take it out in the market, and the clients will ultimately dictate what it is that you're going to sell. So between the 2 years of doing Chaos and KPI, we just spent a lot of time going out to our target clients, doing solving the problems they had at the time, and then beginning to work out what we were best suited for and what offered the most value to clients. And we're still doing that today. We're always refining the offer that we present to our clients, both in terms of what brings them value, but also what we are best to do. So the transition between the two was about kind of sharpening that offer.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's one of my favorite maxims because it sort of sums up the game of business, right? You can't really do at the end of the day, the market will decide and your customer will tell you if it's good or not. And I think a lot of people will, I suppose, get a lot of value from that and really resonate with that because there is a temptation to sort of build in a quiet corner before it's very vulnerable putting stuff out there. Did you come across any sort of like internal objections about putting stuff out there? Because obviously a lot of the key person of influence method is like, you got to put stuff out there. You got to really like put your flag in the ground for what you stand for. Did you, any sort of ups and downs, internal resistance at any point?
Absolutely, in internal resistance from a point where, a lot of things that we were trying to do was about trying to be perfect as opposed to prolific. So I suppose the first two cycles of KPI, we got really deep on pitch. And it wasn't until the pitch really locked in that the rest of the program fell into place for us. So, publish became a lot easier when we knew how we were going to describe ourselves, how we were going to describe our offer. We really began to understand our customer and their pain points, and we could talk to them in a meaningful way. And then from that, being able to refine the product and get out and do, profile and promotion. So I suppose the first cycle through when, we came out of that first block thinking, God, we still don't know what our pitch is, was a bit disheartening, I have to say. But when we got into the second cycle and we went at it again, things just started to click together. And I think one of my big takeaways from this was, especially from a pitch perspective, you just have to speak it into existence, and it will be wrong and it will be difficult and it'll be hard the first time you say it, and it might even feel alien. But the more times you say it, and the more times you see people react in a positive way to what you're pitching into existence, the more confidence that you will build. And then the rest of the program, from my perspective, came a whole lot easier when it came to publish. We quickly put on a podcast as our kind of main content engine, because writing blogs isn't really our style. But doing a podcast and a face-to-face interview kind of provides that content engine where we can repurpose everything that's coming out of the podcast. And then that drives the profile piece from a social media perspective, which then leads on to winning awards and being able to raise the overall brand of the business.
Cool. And one question off the back of that, what was, between cycle 1 and cycle 2, what was the thing that went and suddenly you had a pitch, you know what I mean? What was there something, if you could distill it?
It was probably just going through capstone time and time again. I mean, there's nothing. I wish there was there was a mic drop moment or a golden nugget, but we just sat on capstone time and time again. I think there's maybe one session with Topher where he wasn't talking to us directly, but as you go to more sessions, you listen to people do more pitches, and you listen to the mentors do more pitches. At some point, that style just sinks in, and with the capstone framework, and I would even say for the capstone, we probably only have half of that nailed down. The other half is still going to take time, around origin, mission, vision, and the purpose piece or the emotion piece. But getting those first kind of 5 bits around clarity, authority, problem, solution really built the confidence across the business. And now we have a consistent pitch that we go to all clients with. We have a consistent deck that we go to all clients with, and it receives really, really good feedback, and it actually differentiates us in the marketplace. We look more polished, professional than we actually are behind the scenes.
It's that age-old thing of, the audience never knows what goes on behind with the actors on the stage. So that's really cool. And I mean, I think I know what the answer will be, but if you could, or 1 or 2 P's, what was the sort of one that had the biggest impact for you?
Pitch, for sure. Having the ability to make that connection with the client, make the client think, God, these guys really understand us, and to help them, to be able to narrate that story, and take them through the reason why we got into the sector that we're in, the origin behind why we're doing what we do. Helping them to relate to the problem and match the problem to the solution, and help them to see that we've really thought through our product and proposition. And then post that, I would say publish. The podcast is going really well, and it affords us the ability to speak to our target clients in a safe way, but also for us in particular, it gives us that body of content that we can then repurpose out across multiple social channels, and convert to blog content. So when people Google us now, we appear in a way that we would like to appear. We have a YouTube channel, we have blog posts that come off the back of content, we have people resharing the podcast, and that helps us to I guess further establish our authority in the marketplace. I suppose the third I would say as well would just be around profile and doing the awards. So the ability to hit your pitch with, we are an award-winning business, gives you a lot of confidence and a lot of gravitas off the bat. And it really, in my experience, people's ears really do pick up whenever you say that. And it's also a kick for the wider team. We have a process now where every January we go for as many awards as we think that we are credible in. We don't win them all, but we do win a proportion of them. That kind of builds a wave of momentum, both externally from a brand perspective and also internally from, people just feeling that their contribution is being recognized on a wider scale.
Yeah, I'm certainly someone that likes a pat on the back. I don't think most team members are. Cool. Well, I mean, sort of rounding off, I'd love to talk about what are some triumphant moments, some wins, anything like, tangible that you can point to, that you can think of, either ultimate result, bunch of wins. Would love to collect them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a number across the journey, and I think the big thing I would say is, it is important to remember and celebrate those wins. From signing up our first client to signing up our next client at a bigger size. Doing our first 5-figure deal, doing our first 6-figure deal. We're on the way to doing our first 7-figure deal. Crossing that 1 million in revenue threshold is a big win. But I suppose the biggest win that we've had to date, and one of the reasons that we were chatting was, we were in a competitive process for some quite significant funding to bring a product to market. So one of my frustrations, having gone through KPI, was we never actually nailed what I thought was the perfect product. But as per my previous comment, prolific over product. But we have come up with a product idea now that we took through a competitive process for funding, and received funding. So we won against quite stiff competition, so 16 others, and that was great in terms of just getting that external validation again from peers. Industry funders who are going to put their money into us, and also customers. And that is, the consulting business was always going to be a reasonably worthwhile venture. It would give us purpose, impact, the financial freedom, but the product could be a game changer for us. So that has been probably the biggest achievement that we have achieved to date, and we're now taking that out to really large clients. And if it takes off, we'll be in a very different position. And I suppose it will be the ultimate payback for the pain that we as all entrepreneurs go through as part of this journey. I mean, one of the things I have learned moving from corporate to entrepreneurship is it really is a roller coaster. With every peak comes then a drop. You have to work your way right back up to the next peak. But that's where the community comes in my view, because everyone's on a similar journey. Or there are people there that have been on the journey just before you. It's not like you're working with folk that are so significantly down the line in front of you. You're actually working with folk that are maybe 6 months, a year in front of you, so they can provide you with that relevant experience, put an arm around you to say, actually, I've been through this. It happens. We talk about the achievements, some of the downfalls. We've been sued twice along the way for random reasons. No fault of our own, I have to say. But at those low points is when you actually need a community to kind of say, how should I approach this? Particularly whenever you're resource poor, and you can't spend 50 grand on a legal team, or 50 grand on a good finance team if you're looking to raise funding. So as much as it is about sharing the peaks, the community is also about kind of helping you whenever you go through a trough.
That's a beautiful way to end, rounding it off with the beautiful community that we have here. I mean, thank you so much. That is such a generous sort of full picture of your whole journey. I feel like there's gold.